Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. The highlights of the Seera. No legacy is more deserving, more inspiring, more educating than the legacy of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. There is uniqueness about his life. After all these years, this saga is offering an abundance of wealth, of knowledge, guidance and inspiration. Offering a model to be emulated, and of course it cannot be covered in one series. However, we can go through certain highlights. We will deprive ourselves of great service if we do not correlate these highlights to our everyday life as we live it in the contemporary time. One of the pitfalls is to study any event or any history, separating it from the context in which it took place. To study history detached from the time, the place, and the culture within which it happened leaves us with a history that we cannot relate to and we cannot even understand. So it is very important to address the stage, the place and the time and the culture within which Islam emerged and the Prophet was born. Unfortunately, the stage before Islam is very vague. However, we can try to understand what was going on and how Arabia looked like at that time. The reasons of it being that vague is that there was no central authority, no central government, and there is no writing, no documentation. We are depending here on oral tradition, mainly came in poetry. If we look to the geography of the area, we find that this area was divided into 5 divisions: Tuhama, Al-Hijaz, Najd, Al-Yaman, and Al-Arud. Tuhama is close to the Red Sea, Al-Hijaz is in the middle, mountains and valleys, but it contains Mecca and Medina, which was called Yathrib at that time. Najd is actually a desert. Yemen is cultured area, but way in the south, and Al-Arud is the area which we call now the Gulf or Bahrain. We notice something here that's very clear is the scarcity of water, particularly in the middle area. Water was very scarce, and for people to pursue their living, they have to seek for it, to look for it, and to wait to see where the rain will fall and to go there, take their herds and their livestock and try to live. So it was a very mobile, very nomadic kind of life. Except for spotty areas of agriculture, like in Al-Ta'if and in Al-Yaman, it is a harsh weather, very rough terrain, and the people there lived on herding and on trading and also on wars. They fight each other and they just grab things from each other, which was the story of Arabian life at that time. One other very obvious thing was illiteracy. Those people were illiterate. And when we say illiterate, it doesn't mean that they were not wise or were not educated, but they don't have complex ideas. The ideas or the expressions are so spontaneous. You don't find, for example, very sophisticated stories or long stories. You don't find sophisticated literature that's resulted from the accumulation of knowledge through writing. You find these outbursts of emotions in poetry that will record certain events, but definitely not in a complex and sophisticated way. If we look at the political structure at that time, or what we may call political structure, there was actually no structure in the sense. There were certain kingdoms, but they were kingdoms by proxy. In other words, the Persians or the Romans will assign or will encourage one of those people to be, so to speak, the king of the area. Like Himyar in Yemen and similar situations, but they were not prevailing. They never represented a real central government. The ruling is the ruling of the tribe. The tribe that prevails will have more authority than the other tribe, but will not have an authority prevailing all over the area. And in tribal society, where the tribe is the unit, and where competing for water and fighting for spoils is the style, as a consequence of that, we find a very hierarchical structure within the tribe. And we find also that the role of women is being completely reduced and well defined. Women, because they were not fighters, they were not hard workers, they cannot compete in this very harsh situation, they became, so to speak, a liability, a chattel, something that you have to protect, and the greatest shame is to lose your women to the other tribe. So women became then a property. They didn't have much to say. They also produce the children and the boys for the tribe. There are exceptions for that. When a woman reaches prominence, she becomes very influential. She gives her name sometimes to the children, and she becomes a source of pride. But this is definitely was the exception, not the rule. For example, if we look at the marriage institute, it was not marriage the way it was known after Islam. Marriage itself was a very loose bonding between a woman and several men. And actually, it was considered normal for a woman to mate with as many men as she wants. And when she begets a child, she chooses, she decides who will be the father of the child. Then this becomes the family. So it is interesting that the family is formed in retrospect, after the mating happens and after she kind of gives herself to several people. And when she gets pregnant, they don't abort, but when she gets pregnant, she then decides who will be the father of the child, probably the man she liked most or she enjoyed most or what have you. Of course, this created in a society that is very big on the issue of lineage and the issue of who is the legitimate line of from which tribe. This usually created a mess that erupted later on in several fights just based on that. And those who study in details, they find this spilled over to the Islamic era. Some of the Muslims, as a matter of fact, of the rulers of Islam, were doubtful about their real lineage, and their opponents attacked them, saying that you are not legitimate, you are not quite a respectable man because you are claiming a tribe while we don't know actually who is your father. Some of them admitted that. They didn't hide it. It was known that this person is the product of who knows who. And this definitely, number one, minimized the value of the woman because she is handled by so many men, but also increased the value of the woman because she is the only solid line of reference. They don't know who is the father, but they definitely know who is the mother. And this is why we find at this time lots of people are named after their mothers, not after their father. And some of those were very eminent Sahaba that are known for the names of their mother because this is the line that is, so to speak, guaranteed. Another practice that went hand in hand with that, because some people didn't want this kind of commitment, was prostitution. Prostitution was prevalent in Arabia according to the sources, and it was not secrecy. It was almost announced. It's something like what we see in the society today, and you open the phone book for call girls and everybody knows who is that and what they are doing. The same thing was there. They were announced by putting kind of a light, a lamp, in front of their homes. Another practice, of course, was slavery. Slavery was very prevalent without any restriction, and slavery was used to buy people to do the work for you or to do the fighting for you or to buy women for sexual relief as well. And this was the norm, and it formed a certain class at that time. Another characteristic of this kind of life was discrimination. There was absolute discrimination. The Qurashi against the non-Qurashi. The high-class tribe against the low-class tribe. To an extent that are almost unacceptable. For example, you find people are very proud that their sheep and cattle always drink the clear water. What they mean is no one will dare to go to the spring of water before them. And when they drink and their livestock will make that water dirty and turbid, the other tribes come. So they are kind of taking the first class or the VIP status as far as water is concerned. And this discriminatory attitude was prevalent. All through this tribal society, it was like that. There was a group called Al-Mawali, who are either slaves or released slaves, so they don't belong to a certain tribe. And those were kind of the downtrodden and not very respected in this society. There was a group also called the Sa'ali. And those were members of the society who are not belonging to tribes. In other words, either their ancestry is not known, or they refuse to give allegiance to the tribe. And they have a chapter in Arabic poetry, a beautiful writing, because of course they were free souls roaming around, have no allegiance to anybody, they do whatever they want, and they say whatever they want. So when you look to this society, how does it express itself? Always societies express themselves in art, like drawing or like sculpturing. They did not have that. Or let us say buildings, they did not have that, so their art actually was in the form of poetry. And they said that the poetry is the index of the Arab. By index they mean it is the encyclopedia where you can find the history, you can learn about geography, you can learn about feelings, about practices, about standards of beauty, etc. All of that you find it in poetry. But poetry also was doing the function not only of the art that expresses the society, but the function of the media. The media that was usually combative. In other words, if you have a great poet in your tribe, you will be feared. People will try to appease you so that this poet will not unleash his tongue against you. And because if that poet said something bad about a person or about a tribe, no matter how this tribe is, and no matter whether doesn't matter whether it is true or false, if the poetry is good, it goes. It's exactly like now. If you have strong media and it spreads the worst lie all over the place repeatedly, it will be a reality. Perception is reality. And so when we find that a poet comes to a very respectable tribe, but they had a problem with them, and they were called Bani Anf. Anf means nose. He puts a piece of poetry making fun of this or ridicule that which said وَمَنْ يُسَوِّي بِأَنْفِ النَّاقَةِ الذَّنَبَ means no, he was proud of his tribe, which is Anf, and he said the other tribe is like the tail of the camel, not like the Anf, not like the nose of the camel, not high, it is low. And this tribe was completely ridiculed and humiliated because of that. And there were so many examples of when poetry took this very important place in the society, either as an art or as a media. Poets became very respectable people, very cherished people. They celebrate the birth of a poet in the tribe. The moment he shows the talent, that tribe will celebrate. And they have a contest for poetry every year where poets from all over Arabia come to Mecca, and this gave Mecca a special status, and they read their poetry, and kind of people judge which is the best piece, and if a piece is the best, they get whoever knows how to write, and he writes it, and they hang it over the Kaaba. So this is the source of al-mu'allaqat, which is a good piece of poetry hanged on ulliqat on the Kaaba. What does it mean when it is ulliqat on the Kaaba? Means all the year around, people will come from all over Arabia to read it and memorize it and take it back to their tribe. This will impact Islam, as we will see later. Because they fought the Prophet by poetry. Then they accused him that he is just a poet. Then he had to recruit poets to respond to them. So it was a very real factor that we cannot overlook at that time, and will alert us to the importance and significance of having media that will defend Islam in an effective way. And so we are left now with 7 of these mu'allaqat, 7 of these famous pieces of poetry. This doesn't mean that they were just 7, but 7 are the ones who filtered through the time to come to our time and age, and they are memorized now and they are present in books. This will add to the background of this pre-Islamic era, and we will see how this really impacts Islam. This is together with other factors that we are talking about, like the religions in the area, etc. This is almost all what we know about pre-Islamic Arabia, and within that environment the Prophet, peace be upon him, was born, it is said, on the 9th day of Rabi' al-Awwal, and some calculations, they said it is the year 571, the 20th of April. This is the same year where an important event took place in Arabia and gave its name to the year. It was called the year of the elephant, Am al-Fil, because Abraha from Abyssinia tried to kind of take over the Kaaba and move it to his country so that he can get all those people who come to pay homage to the Kaaba will come to his place, and this will show his authority and will kind of boost up the economy in his area. What happened? He brought the famous army of elephants, and there was a divine intervention in a way, and his powers were destroyed. During that period, the grandfather of the Prophet was the guardian of the Kaaba, and it was a great relief that the Kaaba stayed intact and stayed in. If we look at the childhood of the Prophet, we find certain characteristics. He was born to Amina bint Wahb and Abdullah ibn Abdul Muttalib, and both of them have a certain characteristic. They are from the elitist of the elite lineage-wise, but they were poor. In other words, we have that combination that we are familiar with of the big name, the big family, but the very scarce resources and wealth. Muhammad was born, and as it was the habit at that time, he was sent to be nursed in the desert so that he grows up healthy in an environment which is more conducive of producing healthy children, and this was the common practice at that time. As he was still in the womb, his father died. So to start with, we have an orphan. He came to life as an orphan, deprived of the protection and the effect and the impact of a father on a son. And this is something we have to note because it is important. So because his father died, his mother also died at a very early age when she was taking him to visit his uncles in Medina. She died in Al-Abwa, a town between Mecca and Medina. So that newly born child, newly born orphan, is now deprived of his mother also. We notice here also that he lost the full impact of a mother on a child. Then we notice that he was then taken care of by Abdul Muttalib, his grandfather, who dies also soon, to end up with Abu Talib, his uncle, who will take care of. So we notice here that he is a lonely child. There is no human being who can claim that he or she impacted his life or molded his life in a certain way. He is on his own to a great extent. He moved from home to home to home, from environment to environment to environment. He did not settle under one guardianship, and we can say that this guardianship made Muhammad whom we know. He worked in herding the sheep like all the poor people at that time, and he did that for a few years, with all what this will bring to the mind of a child and the kind of character that is needed to do this kind of job. The responsibility, the assertiveness, the attentiveness, etc. So the point that we notice here, as if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is setting the stage that Muhammad will be brought up by the divine intervention, not by the direct impact of human. A very special environment and a very special upbringing. We don't know much about his childhood. There are certain stories, some of them are not confirmed, and we are not going go through that because they have that fascination of miracles which the Prophet himself never used to confirm or to make any point. And he kept emphasizing that he's just a human being born to a poor woman from Quraysh who used to eat the dry food, etc. So we will not go through these stories. They definitely are not highlights. We can glimpse at him when he was 12 years old. This was his first trip to Sham, which is the area of Palestine, Syria, and Lebanon as we know them now. Sham was a more advanced society, more agriculture and better weather, and the reason he went there was within the trade caravans that used to go once a year north to Sham and south to Yemen. At that time he was 12 years old. There is another trip to Sham later on when he was 25 years old. That is more known because obviously he remembered it more and talked about it. When he was 20 years old, now we are going through his youth, when he was 20 years old, he participated in what was called Harb al-Fujjar, the War of the Outrageous. Harb al-Fujjar is one of these wars of pre-Islamic Arabia which basically triggered by the tribal pride. And it was a very bloody war. And Quraysh was taking one side, and he is a member of Quraysh, so he was participating in this war, and actually it is reported that he contributed to the fight. There is something here to notice, that this man then was not isolated or ascetic or not concerned about the affairs of his people. He was in the middle of the events. He was an active member of his society and of his people. He is not the kind who will say, you go to war, I have nothing to do with that, or this is none of my business. No, he went with his uncle Al-Abbas and participated in this war. After this war, because there was lots of bloodshed, it came to an end, and he then attended to an important treaty called Hilful Fudul, the Treaty of Fudul, or we can translate it, the Treaty of Virtue. The Hilful Fudul, its significance and its importance, it was actually for human rights. After all this trauma that they went through, all the chiefs gathered in one place, in one house, and they made an agreement that they will stand with the weak against the strong and with the stranger against the people of Mecca. Because if you are a stranger, if you are a passing by, a transient, you have no tribe to protect you. They can take your money, they can take your life, they can violate your rights right and left. So they decided that this eventually leads to wars and to misery, so let us make an agreement. We will stand by the weak if he is wrong done, and that the passenger or the stranger will be supported and protected as long as he is in Mecca. The important thing about this treaty is that it was mentioned by the Prophet after Islam, and he said something very important. He said, I attended a treaty in that place which to me is more important than all the wealth on earth, and if I am called to such a treaty now, I will respond and participate. This is opening for us a certain vision that we ought to participate in alliances for goodness, even if the persons are not Muslim. Any agreement for human rights, for good cause, and for virtue, a Muslim not only allowed, is encouraged if he is following the footsteps of our model, peace be upon him. This means that we never hesitate. We should be, as a matter of fact, in the forefront of such endeavors that will protect the weak and will protect the vulnerable. And so it is an important landmark in the youth life of Prophet. Another important landmark is the known story of building the Kaaba. The Kaaba was destroyed, and the Arabs decided to build it again. They got a Roman carpenter who will show them how to build. This shows you, I probably overlooked to say in the background, that there was no industry in it. So to have something that looks simple like building a Kaaba, because those people are used to tents. They were not used to build solid buildings. So they got a foreign expert, so to speak, to help them to build the Kaaba. And to build the Kaaba, this is an honor that was reserved to the chiefs, to the big shots in the society from all the tribes. They all came together and started building. And they reported that the most important men in Arabia used to make it a point that they carry the logs and they carry the rocks and show that they are really rolling their sleeves up and participating in that great honor. One very interesting point in history is that they ran out of funds. I personally don't know how they were funding that, but whatever resources they had dedicated for that, they ran out of it. So it was a dilemma. So that shows you the scarcity of resources in this society. They built the Kaaba smaller than the real one, and they took a shortcut, so to speak. And they kept part of the original Kaaba as part of the lowest fence, so that they maintain the tradition or the remnants of Ismail and Ibrahim, but they built a smaller Kaaba, and they say it was smaller and taller. But this is not the issue. The issue is because now the lower layers are high, someone have to carry the black rock, which is kept from the original Kaaba in its place. So they considered this, of course, as the most important action that will be taken in building the Kaaba. So needless to say, they started arguing who will do that, and everyone felt that he has more right to do it. They raised their voices, the name calling started, and everybody saying, I'm better than you, no, I'm better than you, these are my ancestors, who are you, and things like that. And it escalated to the point that they went seeking their swords to start the fighting right and there in the house that was dedicated for complete peace. There was a very wise man called Umayyah ibn al-Hakam who said, hold it, let us do something more intelligent than that, let us have arbitration. Of course they will argue again, who will be the arbitrator, from my tribe or from your tribe or from this tribe or from that tribe. So he said, okay, let us get us out of the way. The first person who enters the place now, no matter who he is, will be our arbitrator. It happened that Prophet Muhammad was the first person to come, and what is important to us is the reaction, a complete sigh of relief. And they said, Ja al-Amin, came the trustworthy or the honest. This is important to us because by the age of 25, by the age of 35, he was 35 at that time, he already established unbelievable credibility, and he became so trusted based on his merit as a person. Now he is not bringing Quran or anything. He already developed his credibility in the society, and so it was no problem to accept him to arbitrate in probably the most important dilemma that faced them. We as Muslims, particularly Muslims in America, have to understand, before we go and convince and argue and lobby, etc., are we trustworthy and respectable people or not? If we are not, all the efforts are used. Developing this kind of respectability and stature in the society is very important. I have to go back to his early age, about 25 years old, and as we said, during his childhood he was just herding, he was a shepherd. When he became a youth, he started working in trade. And in trade means what? He did not have a capital himself. So people hire him to carry their goods, to be sold, to bring them the price or the profit, and they give him a part of this. He himself did not have a capital to invest. And he did that for several people. One of those was Khadija bint Khuwaylid, a very respectable woman who had lots of money. And as I said in the beginning, women who made it became very respectable. Women who became distinguished in something, either in poetry, khansa, or in wealth, like Khadija, or others. They became important. He took the trip for Khadija's investment, and he came back with great profit. And they say, some people wanted to say, that it is a miracle that he made that good in this trip. I would like to look back and say he was probably just honest. Probably other people used to embezzle part of the profit. He did not. He was a man of great integrity. She was so impressed, and so she solicited his marriage. She sent people to him and to his uncle to tell them that she is interested in being married to him. At that time he was 25, she was either 40 or 45. And she loved the Prophet very much. He loved her immensely, and he never stopped talking about her until the end of his life, to the point that sometimes triggered some sense of envy and jealousy to other wives. It is reported that Aisha said, you keep talking about Khadija, 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 as if there is nobody in life other than Khadija. And his response to her was almost, yes, there is no one. So it was a very empowering, a very enriching, very comfort kind of. This will play an important role in the early stages of Dawah. During that time it was obvious also that Muhammad is special, in a sense that he is involved with people. He is trading for them, wheeling and dealing. He is part of the society. He earned the respect, but also in certain aspects he was aloof. And number one, he was not worshipping the idols. For whatever reason, he didn't worship the idols. Number two, he was very generous with people in spite of his poverty. And of course, when he became wealthy, after his marriage, relatively wealthy, he became even more generous to the poor and to the needy. Number three, he was kind of antsy or restless. Never participated in the indulgences of Quraysh. They had their parties, they have their drinking parties, they had their poetry parties. He stayed away, which is strange for a man of his caliber and a man of his wealth at that time, and a young man who was reported to be very nice looking, to just stay away like that from certain forums, from certain situations. He said a very interesting story that he was on the outskirts herding the sheep with another person of his age, and they heard the music, and they said there is some fun in Mecca, and the Prophet asked that person to take care of the herd, and he will go to see, to look. And he says that on his way, he sat on a tree, under a tree, and he just slept. He fell asleep. He woke up after everything was over. So he was very happy that he was not exposed to that kind of test or that kind of very clean life. But beyond that, I would say philosophically and intellectually and spiritually, he was hungry. He was not feeling that this society is offering him the formula that is suitable for him. So he kind of repeats the same saga of Ibrahim. When he was looking around, he also was looking, and he used to get in seclusion in the cave of Hira. And in the cave of Hira, he takes food and water for several days. And he goes to Hira and considers this his retreat, his time of seclusion, where he sits with himself. But it is also reported that in this area, whenever he saw needy people passing by, looking for food or wandering to go from a place to place, he gives them part of his. So to him, spirituality was not only a self-meditating mood, it is actually still in touch with the people who need it. And he stays there, and most of these times of seclusion were during the month of Ramadan, and he sits there and he thinks, and he talks to the Creator. How did he know the Creator? The saga and the tradition of Abraham was still reverberating in this society. There are remnants. There were the religious situation in Arabia where some Christians close to Asham and close to Al-Yam, some Jews close to Medina, pagans all over, and some people who were called the Hanifs. The Hanifs are the ones who are trying to seek how Ibrahim was doing to keep following him. So they rejected idolatry. They didn't find satisfaction in Judaism. They didn't find satisfaction in Christianity, and they were hanging in there, believing in the one God. I want here to say that Judaism there was not the perfect or the clear Judaism. It was a kind of corrupted or deformed version of Judaism. So if you compare the Jews around Medina to the Jews in any other place, the Jews in Medina were not clear about their religion like the Jews all over the world. So within that environment, he knew that there is one Creator. He didn't have to come through this conclusion through an intellectual trip like Ibrahim. He knew that he is there. And the Quran reported that afterwards about even the Arabs there. وَلَئِنْ سَأَلْتَهُمْ مَنْ خَلَقَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ لَيَقُولُنَّ اللَّهِ. If you ask them who created everything, they will say Allah. So they knew that there is the Creator and He is Allah. But of course they said we worship these idols to bring us closer to Him, as a relay station, so to say. He was not comfortable with that at all. So he sits there and he tries to communicate with the Creator. Stays there for a few days. He felt that this gives him spiritual nourishment and goes back to pursue and to resume the everyday life. This also is interesting because not every person, and I'd like to look to us, people who are working in medicine, in business, in engineering, etc. How many of us will say, I'll dedicate a time of the year just to be with myself? I will not even say tahajjud or what. No, just to have that time to know what it is all about, to reconcile yourself with yourself. This needs a certain mentality and a certain personality to do that. He was there until the major event in human history happened. That is the starting of the revelation. It is thought to be 13 years before Hijrah, on the 17th of Ramadan, which was matched with the Gregorian calendar to be February 1, year 610. On that day, the Prophet received the first revelation. It started by hearing a voice, then seeing a being. Some people keep on describing how he looked like. Just the mere fact that the descriptions are contradictory, it means that the stories we have are not 100% authentic. But there was a being there, and all of us are familiar with feeling a being without being aware about the exact complexion. What we know is the angel Gabriel came to him, and all of us know the story, and said, "Iqra," read or recite, and he said, "Ma ana biqari," I cannot do that, and he repeated it 3 times, and the story says that after each time he kind of like hugged him or squeezed him very strong. Whether this indicates a certain physical change that happened to the Prophet to be ready to receive the revelation or not, we don't know. But obviously it was a very exhausting process. Then he told him, and here we have to look into the verses because they are important. He said, "Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq." Read in the name of thy Lord who created. And the khalaq, when it is not followed by maf'ul bih, by object, means everything. Read in the name of thy Lord who created everything. Who created human from something hanging a clog. Read in the name of your Lord who taught with the pen. And we have to stop here again. He taught human what human knew not. What we talked about in the background and the preparing the stage was not a waste, because here we look at that society that's completely illiterate, that has no writing or recording, that has no complexity in thought, no accumulation of sophisticated knowledge, and comes the first iteration, the first words of the revelation is about reading, about writing, and about research. Recording play in the development of human civilization is unmatched, and without it, it is impossible to have a real civilization. This is why before Islam there was an Arabian existence, but there was not an Arabian civilization. Civilization is a complex structure that includes culture, resources, industry, and behaviors, and the characteristics and a thought process. It expresses itself in arts, in industry, and in science, etc. Before Islam, there was an Arabian existence, but there was no civilization. Why? Because they didn't have the pen. The pen will enable me to write an idea, and I die. The idea is still in paper or on rocks. And somebody else comes and read and say he was wrong, or no, he was right, or it triggers another idea. So they build up on each other until we reach the sophisticated mathematics or chemistry or philosophy or logic or what have you. We found this happened at that time in Egypt. It was happening in Persia. It was happening in India. But it was not happening in Arabia. Arabia is like the blank paper that was ready for new writing, new chapter in human history, to be written on this blank paper. And as Muhammad was not impacted directly by any human being during his upbringing, Islam was not impacted by a previous civilization in the place of its birth. This is a very profound parallel, because God Almighty meant to produce something so pure and so divine and so unique, to be a model, to be emulated until the day of judgment. The glory of Muhammad or of early Islam is not that they did things, but they left a model in the memory of humanity that it will keep referring to and try to strive to live up to it. And to have that model, it is a divine model, pure model that cannot be done by other human beings. Have Islam, for example, landed or born in Egypt, definitely it would have been affected by the pharaohs and by the civilization that was there. Have it landed in Rome, it would have had the same problem that Christianity had in Rome. Trinity was born in, which is totally alien to the Christian nature of the disease, and so on and so forth. So we find that the revelation here talks about الذي علم بالقلم علم الإنسان ما لم يعلم, was the very early seed of the Islamic civilization and the Islamic scientific revolution, which is important for us also to ponder. The scientific revolution after the Renaissance happened against religion. They had to isolate religion to be able to have a renaissance. The Islamic scientific revolution, the Islamic Renaissance, happened because of the religion. And those are two different approaches to a phenomenon. But if we Muslims are not aware of this difference, we'll fall in the trap of let us isolate religion to be scientific, which is the Christian model pushed Christians to do. We should rejoice in the fact that I can be scientific because I am religious. After this earth-shaking experience, the Prophet obviously was completely taken and completely disturbed with such an unexpected, unusual experience he went through. He went shivering to his home. He went to Khadija, his kind, supportive wife, and he was very concerned and very worried about himself. Let us remember again, this is Arabia, where there are lots of talks about jinn and about being possessed and about being haunted and so many things that would come to mind if something so unusual happens, and to him it is so real that he cannot doubt it by any means. So he goes sweating and shivering to Khadija, and he says, I went through that and I am very concerned. The response of Khadija is very interesting, and I have to say it in Arabic for those who know Arabic, then we'll translate it. She told him, Wallahi lan yatrukaka Allahu abadan. Innaka latasilu الرحم وتحمل الكل وتكرم المعدوم وتقري الضيف وتعين على نوائب الحق. And she said he shouldn't worry, she will take him to her relative who knows about these things. In a sense, she is telling him, nothing bad can happen to you because of your character. You are a man of a character that God will not let down. What is this character? You are kind to your relatives. You always support the weak. You always generous to the poor. You always open your home to the guest. You always help people against the trials and tribulations of life. Because in these few words, Khadija tells us about the personality of the Prophet before he became a prophet. So she takes him to Warqa ibn Nawfal, who is her cousin, who was a man of knowledge in the Bible. And she tells him, and she lets Muhammad tells him what happened. And Warqa ibn Nawfal also responded a very interesting response. He said, I wish, he was an old man, he said, I wish if I am alive when your people will persecute you and kick you out. So the Prophet wondered why he was a very loved man in his society. He said, no one comes with what you are coming with who was not persecuted and kicked out. What you have seen is the truth, and you are the messenger of God. The first Muslim then is Khadija, who first person in our ummah after the Prophet is Khadija, who believed in him moment one, had no doubts, and she tried to help all through. After that, he started talking about that to certain people, but what happened is something that's also very disturbing. He got the revelation once with these few verses that we recited. By the way, the rest of Surah Iqra came later on, but at that stage he received the first few verses that we talked about. Then after that, complete silence. He went to the cave, he walked to the desert, he got himself in seclusion, to the point that he started wondering, could it just have been a freak accident, or a mind trick, or a trick of my imagination? He was so concerned, what did I do wrong? If I don't deserve that, why did it come? If it came, why did it stop? At a very crucial time that I am going through. So we have to appreciate the agony of Muhammad over that period that we call the lag period, where there was no revelation. How long did it last? We really don't know. Some people say 40 days, some people say 4 months, some people say 6 months, some people even say 3 years. This shows you how documenting history was very difficult in that society. The difference between 40 days and 3 years is humongous. So anyways, for a sizable amount of time that had its impact on the Prophet,
the wahy or the revelation completely stopped. Until one of these days, it resumed again by Surah Al-Muddathir. What happened after he received the first revelation, he went home and he wrapped himself because he was cold, he was shivering, and he was scared. Wrapped himself also here can be taken symbolically. He wanted to be left to himself, kept to his own. He didn't want to mix and to mingle. And here comes the wahy, Ya ayyuha al-muddathir, addressing him as you, the one who is wrapped up. And comes the horrendous order, Qum fa'anzir. That's the order of start your job as the messenger of God and as the prophet. If you look at the first revelation, Iqra, it was addressing the prophet and putting certain scenes. It did not give him orders to do anything but to read. Here, there is a job. Qum fa'anzir. Get up and start warning people. Start revealing the message. And for that, you will need certain preparation. So he received the order now to start his job and his task as the prophet and as the messenger of God. The order is, Ya ayyuha al-muddathir, you the one who is wrapped up, stand up, get up, qum fa'anzir, and warn the people. وَرَبَّكَ فَكَبِّرْ, glorify your Lord, the Creator, not anything or not anybody else. وَثِيَابَكَ فَطَهِّرْ means cleanse yourself, physically and spiritually. ثِيَابَكَ فَطَهِّرْ is not only cleaning the clothes, because we say فُلَانٌ طَاهِرُ الثَّوْبِ means that he is a man of good character. Prepare yourself for that job. وَالرُّجْزَ فَهْجُرْ, don't ever use harsh or bad language. وَلَا تَمْنُن تَسْتَكْثِرْ, don't give people expecting return. This is a man who will start now, as he mentioned before, when his wife told him, why don't you go to sleep? He told her, مَضَى زَمَنُ النَّوْمِ, the time of sleeping is over. This is a very big job he is expecting to carry on. So when you give, don't expect a return. You will be a giver all through. وَلِرَبِّكَ فَاصْبِرْ, and for the sake of your Lord, be patient and persevere. In other words, you get yourself ready, focus, get your job, and expect persecution. And when this happens, you got to be patient and resilient and perseverant. This is exactly what Waraq ibn Nawfal told him. If I am alive, I will help you against the persecution that you will suffer. So the Prophet gets these words, and then he starts being aware that he has a job to be done, and he goes around, but to his close people. He could not yet go in public and say, I have a message. So we notice those who were affected by him early on. Khadija, of course, which again is inspiring that the first believer is a woman. As we will see later on, the first marcher was a woman also. Then Ali ibn Abi Talib, who was living with the Prophet because his father was somehow poor. Then Zayd ibn Haritha, who was kind of a servant, who was a slave, and the Prophet released him, liberated him, and stayed as a servant of the Prophet. Then we have Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, a young man who has an interesting story. He just was close to the Prophet. The Prophet told him about the revelation, and he believed. But his story leaked to his mother. And his mother was a very tough, domineering matriarch who told him there is no way that I'll accept that. And she tried to persecute him, actually, to push him to leave Muhammad and to stay within the tradition. One of the things that she did, one of the greatest shame in Arabia, is if your mother is hungry in your home. You are a young man and your mother is starving. That's a shame. So she decided to go on food strike, hunger strike. She said, I will not eat until I die, and you'll carry your shame all over, my shame all over Arabia. He went to the Prophet, peace be upon him, and complained, my mother is really pushing. Here came the revelation. وَوَصَّيْنَا الْإِنسَانَ بِوَلَدَيْهِ حُسْنًا فَإِنْ جَاهَدَاكَ عَلَى أَنْ تُشْرِكَ بِي مَا لَيْسَ لَكَ بِهِ عِلْمٌ فَلَا تُطِعْهُمَا. We order you to be very kind and very nice to your parents. But if they jahadaka, they push you very hard to associate deity with God, don't obey them on that. And in other areas of the Quran, وَصَاحِبْهُمَا فِي الدُّنْيَا مَعْرُوفًا, during life, stay nice to them, but don't follow them. When it became so clear, Sa'd ibn Waqqas is reported as saying to his mother, "Oh mother, I swear by God that if you have 1,000 souls, 1,000 lives, and you lost them one after the other, I will not change my mind about this religion." So of course she gave up and she started eating. One of the early believers was Suhaib. Suhaib was a man from Rome. Came to Arabia, and he was bought and sold and stayed in Arabia, and he believed in Muhammad. Very poor man, but he's from a different culture. Then we find Ammar ibn Yasir, who was also a slave. And we find Salman, who is from Persia. We find, I am mentioning that to see the colorfulness and the multiculturalism, if I may say, the pluralism of people around the Prophet. They are people from different areas who gather together, cutting through their ethnic habits and their colors and their areas of origin to coalesce around the message. Another interesting man at this very early time was Abu Dharr al-Ghafari. Abu Dharr al-Ghafari is interesting and is important in our history because he was a very rough Bedouin who lives in the outskirts. But he was a very aggressive and concerned man. He said, "I heard rumors that there is somebody in Quraysh telling people that there is a God who created everything and he is refusing to worship idols and he is changing the character of people. I want to know about that." So he sent his brother, said, "Go and look around and report back to me." His brother came back and said, "Yes, I heard about the man. I saw him with his followers and he seems to be saying very nice things." Abu Dharr was not satisfied. He said, "I want to go and see myself." And he went to where the Muslims used to hang around. And he went just straight and said, "Where is the man who says so and so?" They told him, "He's that man there," pointing to Muhammad. So he went and he said, "What do you say?" He said, "I say this, this and that. There is one God and people should be nice and should follow justice and to do this, the main items in Islam." And he said, "So what's going on?" He said, "Don't tell anybody because whoever does that is hurt. We are in trouble." So Abu Dharr, following his nature, stands up very loudly and say, "Oh, everybody listens. I am Abu Dharr al-Ghafari from Ghafar. I believe that there is no God but Allah and that Muhammad is his messenger." So what happened? They jumped on him and kept beating on him until he fainted. And Abu Bakr rushed and put himself on Abu Dharr and told them, "Are you out of your mind? This man is from Ghafar. Your caravans pass by this homeland. If you kill him, you will not be able to trade whatsoever." So they came to their senses and they stopped beating him. He just was recovering. The moment he recovered, he said, "Everybody here listens. I believe that there is no God but Allah and that Muhammad is his messenger." They beat him again until he fainted again. 3 times the guy was going to die. And he said, "That is it." And he went back to his tribe. And it is reported then that his tribe converted to Islam. But very interesting dynamics during this underground period. They used to meet in a place that is now written in our history called Darul Arqam. Al-Arqam was a man who has a home. It seems that to be a more sturdy home, like it's not a tent. And he became a Muslim and he donated his house to have meetings for the Muslims with the Prophet. Darul Arqam ibn Abil Arqam, a term that we should never forget, because in this school the whole Islam on which we live now was formed. The very early nucleus that had this crash course on the hands of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was formed in Dar al-Arqam. They meet there, and how many they were? 30 people maximum. All what Muhammad, that's all, as you notice, including his family. His family and Khadija and some of Khadija's family and Ayman, who was a servant, and Zaid, who was a servant, and those 2 slaves. It is a very, very small and weak group of people. The only people who were of some stature were Abu Bakr, who was an important. They used to meet in Dar al-Arqam, and the Prophet receives the revelation and teaches them. It was not just he's receiving the revelation and telling them what the revelation says. He was not just a mailman bringing the mail from heavens. No, he was a teacher. This was a very weak group, with the exception of Abu Bakr, of course. From day one, he was very close friend to the Prophet. They used to be together a lot. He had great and immense respect to the Prophet, and Abu Bakr was very respected in his tribe also, because he was a man of wisdom and a man of wealth. Abu Bakr was amongst the very, very early believers. The moment Muhammad told him, he knows that this man will not lie. With the exception of Abu Bakr, the group in general was a very weak group. There is a narration by Zayd who said, at a time we were only 5 of us around the Prophet, 2 slaves and the 3 others. He didn't tell us who are the 3 others. They grew up to 30, including all those people, which means that really it was a very embryonic stage. Nonetheless, the teaching of Dar al-Arqam had its greatest impact on those people who will carry Islam through the thick and thin, and will spread Islam later on. It is interesting to me that, for example, the Islamic movement in Singapore now, the movement is called Dar al-Arqam, which how this traveled through 1400 years and from Arabia to Singapore is part of the legacy of Islam that we still enjoy and privileged with and honored to be belonging. To summarize what we covered so far, we started by trying to give a portrait of Arabia before the birth of Prophet Muhammad. We went through his birth and we noticed how lonely he was when he was born, and how there was something deliberate in having no impact of a human being on him. Then we went through his early childhood, then what we know about his youth and how he was involved in the affairs of his people, and how he acquired during his youth the characteristics of his personality that made him suitable and capable of arbitrating in the dispute around building the Kaaba. He already acquired the title of Al-Amin, or the trustworthy, the one who can be trusted, and how he really lived up to this expectation. Then we went through his marriage to Khadija and the effect of this marriage on him, the reception of revelation, the first one, which is addressed for the first time, the value of reading, writing, and researching, the impact of revelation on him, and the support that his wife gave to him. We went through how he was agonizing over the lack period of the revelation until the revelation started again, giving him the order to start his mission as the messenger and the prophet of God that was revealed in Surah Al-Muddathir, telling him to get up, to warn people, and to get himself prepared and ready and patient and perseverant. Then we went through the period when he gathered around him the very small but very dedicated group that were actually the students of the school in Dar al-Arqam, Ibn Abi al-Arqam, and they became the first crash course on Islam given by the best teacher ever to a group of very open, very enthused men and women. He received the order from God to go public with the da'wah, with the calling for Islam. The verse that came said, فَاصْدَعْ بِمَا تُؤْمَرْ وَأَعْرِضْ عَنِ الْمُشْرِكِينَ, which means, this is in Surah Al-Hijr, obey the orders that will be given to you and never mind those who associate deity with God. Don't be intimidated by them, turn away from them. The Prophet took this, of course, as an order, and he decided to take that very risky, unpredictable step. And we find here what the Prophet did is something quite interesting. He went to a mountain, Safa actually, which we go in Hajj. Of course, it was not covered by marble and things like that now. It was just in the middle of the desert, a slightly elevated place. And he called all over the tribes, and Quraysh in particular, who were the permanent residents of Mecca, to come there because he has an important statement to deliver. As we noticed from what we have said before, the Prophet already was a very respected person in this society. Had he not been respected, nobody would have responded. Just imagine that if you receive an invitation from someone that you don't know, or you don't like, or you don't respect, you will not go. But when you receive an invitation from a person of repute, definitely you will go. So this actually what happened. But let us see how he approached the subject also. Those people came very anxious to know. He never did that before. So he goes there and he starts by asking a question. And this is actually a whole art of addressing people and bringing their attention. He said, I'm asking you a question. If I tell you that there are horses, troops behind this mountain about to attack you, would you believe me? And the response is, of course we will. We never knew you as a liar. You never lied to us. So number one, he established his credibility from their mouth, not from his. He didn't go and say, I am a guy who never lied, listen to me. He offered them the test first, let them make the statement, which then becomes very binding and very impacting. After that he said, Inna ar-ra'ida la yakdhibu ahla. The one who is in front of the people, leading the people, will never lie to his family. In other words, again, he is considering them his family. You are my people. I will never lie to you. Even if I lie to all people, you in particular, I will never lie to. So he is establishing his credibility in a very, very solid way. He's saying, if I deceive all people, I will never deceive you. That was settled. All of them agreed on that. Then after that, he is swearing by God. He said, Wallahi, I swear by Allah, there is no deity but Him. I am the messenger of Allah to you in particular and to all the people in general. So we notice here that the message of Islam from its incipients is a universal message, which is not ignoring the immediate reality of Arabia. I am sent to you in particular and to the whole humanity in general. Then after that, he comes with kind of whetting their appetite to the message. I swear by Allah that you will die like you go to sleep. You will be resurrected like you wake up. You will be accountable for what you do. You will be rewarded good for the good and bad for the bad. It is either Al-Jannah, paradise forever, or An-Nar, hell forever. Such a condensed summary of the message. So after he called the people, made them acknowledge his credibility, then he himself established his credibility, then gives the message in a clear and condensed way. And these are his own words, by the way. These are not the words of the Quran. This is the language of Muhammad, talking to those people, establishing the nature of the message, and then establishing the content of the message. When he said that, nobody can say, I didn't understand, or I am confused. Nobody can say, I don't believe you, because they just a moment ago said, you never lie. So he really put them in a very critical situation. What will happen? Human beings are human beings, and establishments are establishments. This is a threat to the establishment. But how do you deal with that? His approach is very logical. You deal with that in an irrational way, because you cannot reason with that if you are bent on denying the truth. You cannot argue logically with what Muhammad did on that day. So what they do, some people were stunned, some people were bewildered, some people just walked away, and some people some people believed. Those are very few, usually the downtrodden of the society, because they could see with their sense that this is a liberating message. Although there is no details yet, but it is obvious. The mere fact that you are accountable for what you do, and this is the message for all people without exclusion, that mere fact make them understand that this is a liberating message. Those who are bent on denying the truth took a hostile stand that expressed, for example, Abu Jahl told him, how ridiculous you are. You call us, all of us, to tell us that? as if what he told them is trivial or not important. And his response, yes, I called you to tell you that. So they started immediately from that moment to discuss how are we going to contain this man at least, if not to eliminate him altogether. And they started, of course, by the normal arguments that were recorded in the Quran. First thing they started saying, he wants us to leave our traditions. And the Quran always responded by traditions, it's what your forefathers were doing. It might have been wrong. As a matter of fact, it was wrong. أَفَلَوْ كَانَ آبَاؤُكُمْ لَا يَعْقِلُونَ شَيْئًا وَلَا يَفْقَهُونَ. Even if your forefathers were not aware or thinking, why do you follow them? Then they started saying he is ridiculing our gods. Then the response of the Quran was, wake up, these are not your gods. And he tells Muhammad, go and ask them, who is the creator? And they say Allah, because this is the vibrating memories from Ibrahim. قُلْ مَنْ خَلَقَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ, who created the heavens and the earth. لَيَقُولُنَّ اللَّهِ, they will say Allah. And you say أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ or أَفَلَا يَعْقِلُونَ, don't they reason then? So how come you say he is driving us away from our gods, while you people know that these are not real gods? Those are gods that you made, not the God who made all of you and everything. Then they started saying this man is bringing fairy tales from the past. أساطير الأولين, fairy tales from the past, mythology of the past. And the Quran responds, of course, the way that all of us know. Then they say he made it up, and the Quran challenged them, so make up something like that. And so on and so forth. I will not go through the details of these different arguments, but all of them were in search of a way to curb the progress of Muhammad and of Islam. And they were very vicious in doing that. They unleashed their poets to say poetry against Muhammad. And some of the wise people said, let us then find a better way to contain him. He might be after prestige, he might be after money, so how about if we make him the king of Arabia? In other words, give him a title. Is this style practiced up till now? Yes, it is practiced up till now. Get a pure man, infused person, believing in what he does, and offer him a boon, offer him something. Even if something have no, what does it mean, the king of Arabia? If each person has his allegiance to the tribe, not to the kingdom, it means nothing, but give him a title and give him money, make him happy, and he leaves us alone. And actually they send to him his uncle saying the tribes gather together, they will raise funds, and they will give you the title of the king and give you all the money you want. And the interesting thing is the reaction of the Prophet to that offer, because this is one of the few times where it was recorded in history in a situation like that the Prophet cried in tears, because he felt so much agony that those people don't have the foggiest idea. And he told his uncle the famous saying, if they put the sun in my right hand and the moon in my left hand. This is a kingdom over the universe now, not over Arabia. The sun and the moon. To desert my message I will not do, and I'll keep working for it until it prevails. So obviously with such a response, the uncle understood that he will not bend him. And by the way, this uncle told him, go ahead, I will support you. This uncle never became a Muslim, but he was a man of integrity and of dignity. And he sensed the sincerity of the person and the seriousness he is taking this issue. So he felt that this is not an issue that will be solved by bribing. So as we see, temptation didn't work. So what is the next step that we see, and that happened before, happened at the time of the Prophet, and happening up till now? When you reach that stage, then persecution. The chapter in our history of persecution of the followers of the Prophet at this time is a very important chapter that is loaded with lessons and with issues that we need to study and we need to be very familiar with. And this will be the beginning of the next tape, God willing. I hope that we talk about that particular chapter that probably ended by the migration to Abyssinia Until then, I hope that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I hope that God Almighty will guide us to benefit from these lessons and to live through this wisdom that all of us need in our contemporary life. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.